So I use design to tell a story. Not trying to sell a product, just to get a point across that cultures have interacted with each other for thousands of years, and that we are more alike than we are not. We're 99.9% identical. That 1% is color, skins, and facial features. And all the bickering is over shrewd people getting people to infight.
Just any input you can give would be awesome. Oh, you're doing some of this art too? Are you painting? Oh. Just watching.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
And,
What's up, Dabs?
Hey, you came to paint?
No, I came to do the tour. We're gonna come to paint another time. A bunch of us are gonna come.
Are you here for the tour?
We're for the tour, yeah.
Maybe I'll say something. This is MBAD African Bead Museum. It was founded in 1996. We moved here in 1999. I had a store downtown Detroit, but I wanted to be in the community because in those days, probably even now, if you go downtown Detroit, you got to spend some money off the top. And I knew that people in the community were not going to come down there spending that kind of money just to walk through the gallery. So I decided to look for a space in the city. I just stumbled up on this building here. And so I called the lady and asked if she wanted to sell me this building. So she said, okay, I'll come down and discuss it with you. Everything went fine until I said I wanted to do a land contract. Oh man, she got pissed. So she said, you're just wasting my time. I want a conventional loan. So I said, I can't do a conventional loan. She said, why? I said, I don't have no credit. Oh, you just wasting. She pissed me off. I mean, she really pissed me off. So I said to her, why don't you just give it to me then? She said, oh, you're crazy. And she left out. She called me back 4 days later and said, if I gave you that building, and you promised to do what you said you were going to do, because I had to sell it first where I was going to do it. I said I would open a bead museum in the community where people would just come in, see the beads, etc. So that's how I acquired this property, based on this woman here and what I had to say. And there was a reason for that. She was in her probably 70s. So if you flip back to her youth, it's probably 40s, 50s. Well, Detroit and the rest of the planet was a different place then. And we thought the solution to our problem was to teach about our history. So she could feel me on that. So we opened the Bead Museum, came here, sitting up here waiting, nobody showed up. So I didn't realize anything you do, you got to market it. I don't care how good it is. If you sold vaccine cures, you got to market it. If you sold cure for a heart attack, people are not just going to come. So Lowe's and Home Depot had a phrase. They said, curb appeal. Come get our grass, flower seeds, and we have beautiful curb appeal. So I said, curb appeal. So I started, first we painted the buildings. That slowed down people. They would come talk, but nobody would go in the bead store. They just, I really love your place, and it's good to have it here. The dust settled, no money. So I started building these installations back here, and it attracted a whole different kind of people. During those days, the European newspaper was sending out photographers and writers to the city of Detroit to capture this place before it becomes the ruins of Detroit. But they came here and got a different kind of ideal about the people in the community. They were literally just ignoring those bad signs and going about doing things they were doing in the communities. Then they spotted this place, which I'm doing things, and they would write about this place and send these artists back to their companies, and they began to see Detroit in a different light because of what was taking place in the various communities. But what happened, nobody ever complained. At the time, I didn't think in terms of what I was doing as design. See, that word has been confiscated by the commercial arena. They control all designs. They give themselves awards for design. But they never give an award to anyone in the community that has a nice flower garden, a nice cut lawn. But you know what surprised me? It really caught me off guard. Nothing personal. But I built this place to attract black people, African people. But my first arrivals was nothing but Europeans. Because I didn't realize they actually traveled to see stuff. They were coming from Europe. Most of my first visitors here were coming from the most faraway places on the planet. So I said, how do you hear about this place? So when my friend, we was in the bar, they said, if you ever go to Detroit, you need to go see this place. I knew that everything that was out here that I had not gotten a permit for. So for about 14 years, I thought I was operating over here incognito, under the radar, hiding in plain view. But I wasn't. It was to my surprise. But the reason why this place is still here with no complaints for the community, because it was communicating with them. The materials that I'm using here, iron, rocks, wood, and mirrors. There's no culture on this planet. Your ancestors are not familiar with those materials because they are part of your actual advancement of your various community. But iron, there's enough iron in each and every one of us to make a 3-inch nail. You can't live without iron. How do you consume iron? It's in various foods that we eat. I remember a Facebook post, this guy said the government was under conspiracy because he had accidentally placed a magnet next to a bowl of cereals, and so all the cornflakes moved over there. Then he posted a video moving around without realizing corn has iron in it. So, wood. We undermine the power of the tree. Modern day science say that we are more like the tree than you can ever imagine. A lot of the African stories of creation said that the tree literally was their ancestor. Now, if you know anything about various cultures in their stories, there's some truth in there. But I'm trying to figure out how you can find truth saying that your grandparents is a tree. Okay, I remember when I was in school, we were talking about Dr. Leakey and his wife in Kenya, Oberlin Gore, studying the oldest life on the planet. So I'm thinking it's some flush or something. It was algae. Can you imagine that? That our beginning is with algae? You know, with outside your belief system. The next thing that I said, okay, I'll put this in my file for future research. Because now I'm trying to justify why someone would say their ancestors are made out of trees. Now, there's about 20 plants that actually eat animals. I mean, consume them. Cats, rats, not that big, but a bird, they drop in there, feed them. So if a tree or a plant can eat animals, why couldn't we come from an animal? Some other strange stuff I saw. I saw some insects that look just like leaves and branches off of sticks. I saw a video of a man, his skin was growing bark. Of course, he has some kind of deficiencies, but he's no longer with us, but the video is still out there. So I'm like, wait a minute, these animals can grow stuff that look like leaves and plants. Maybe my ancestors know it's not that far off. In anthropology, you know how they define life? Nobody knows? I don't know neither, but life is imperfect reproduction. Imperfect reproduction. That's life. You know how to define an animal? If it eat and defecate, it's an animal. So that puts us all in the category with these little small insects that's turning into trees and leaves. I'm watching a video, it said, this unusual seahorse. What was unusual about the seahorse, that it had developed leaves for its extremes. Leaves. So that's okay. I've heard enough. My answer is not too far off. So now, design. The most powerful designs on the planet is what? CBS, Nike, and a few other people. But here's some African designs that I'm going to talk about here today. See that bird with his head turned backwards? Normally that would be an egg in his mouth. That Sankofa bird is telling you not to forget where you came from, to fetch your history. But you got another group telling us that it's the future. I've never been able to visit anything in the future because you have a history here now, but no future. So I had to start taking future lightly because everything is based on the past. And everything you see in the future is going to be some trees from the past, or some clothes from the past. So I began to play around with these African symbolism just to see if there was any energy in them. And sometimes people will say things that make me realize that there are symbols in these things that's reaching us. See, science says that we have 300,000 years of information in us, and it's access to triggers. So these things here are triggers. The chameleon, that is a mythological animal that in Senegal, they said the chameleon is the most powerful animal on the planet because it can jump to wherever it jumps, it camouflages itself. The snake, in the West, the snake is seen as fear. But in Africa, the snake is revered because of its ability to do a lot of different things, but it has no extremity, no limbs. You can find it flying in the air. You can find it in the water. You can find it in the ground. And guess what? It is a formidable predator. If it tags you, you better run. That is a, here it is here. In Africa, you just couldn't wake up one day and say, Mom, I'm grown, I'm 19. You had to go through some kind of initiation. This is a water buffalo. It stands about 13 feet high, 20 feet long. The young men who were going through initiation would be out in the bush. When you saw this coming towards you, you have been initiated. Then they would give you a bead to wear to let everyone know that you've been initiated. And now I have to talk to you about things that adults learn. The circle and the dot, that's the symbol for Inyama. Inyama is the ancestor. all ancestors on the planet, not just one or two, is represented with that circle and the dot. The dots represent the children, all children on the planet. So with those two symbols there, you are with those who came before you and with those who you're leaving the planet from. It's very powerful not to forget that you are leaving this to someone. But the people cutting all them trees down, they didn't realize that. Because they pretty much snuffed us out of trees. Now what I've done here is just repeated this pattern. Because we are in the mindset that we gotta invent something new, create something new. But the African system said, no, you just make whatever you're doing smaller or larger, and people will see it differently. So I built this enclosure, and I call this the point of no return. The name of this installation is I'm Teaching Rocks How to Rust. It's a metaphor. And the metaphor, if you merge yourself in someone else's culture, your own culture goes poof. So where would they get rocks to teach them how to rust? Well, they were taking them from rock land. You go through this door, you come out that door, you're on a ship heading across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to talk about that later on. I used to work at the African American Museum. I was there for almost 20 years. The thing that always irked me was that we would have exhibits up. You know, that was a time only school children came to the museum. So the people I'm giving the tour to are young people. And I'm talking to them about lynching, killing, all that grotesque. I said, it's got to be another way of doing that. So 20 years later, I came up with this metaphor, I'm teaching rocks how to rust. It's a metaphor that deals with the relationship between Africans and Europeans covering a period of 500 years, told through 4 characters, iron, rocks, wood, and mirrors. When you remove people from your story, then you're able to tell the story because I got 4 characters now, I'm not talking about you. So iron, rocks, wood, and mirrors, those are my 4 characters. Rocks. Rocks is more important than we could ever imagine. Rocks were the last thing that science really studied. And they discovered if this rock had holes in it and the water was just dripping out in space, we wouldn't be here. Because of this rock, the liquids and fluids stayed. Trees and plant life grew. But it is a big rock with a hollow center that's iron is burning. So we're on a very fragile planet here, and we're all concerned about our own personal interests, right? How can we forget about that? Floating around the middle space, concerned about what somebody did to you across town. Mind boggling. I picked this rock up. It's designed too, right? It's a piece of rebar. But I had to call it a rock. See, rebar and concrete don't have that same sound like rock and iron. This piece of iron has stained this rock. Yeah. When I picked it up, my knee-jerk reaction was to say, oh, I'm teaching rocks how to rust. Man, that's a good title. So now I got a title to get rid of all this information I've studied for the last 20 years, because now I have a name of my metaphor. Let me show you how to use this rock. Can anyone tell me how you think rocks were able to convince, iron was able to convince rocks they had rusted? It's the same strategy that's used today. Your last professor said you've passed and give you a degree. So you can't really just grab any title. It has to be credited through you through a system. That's how iron convinced this rock it had rusted. It told them, you have rusted. Now we want you to go to the land of wood and teach wood how to rust. Now, how do you think iron did that? Well, that's rhetorical. I'm going to ask you. It told them that they immerse themselves in water, dry out, and the rust process would begin. But the only thing that was happening to wood, it was just crumbling and falling apart. So they decided to challenge this rock. They said, it's not working. The rock said then with all the confidence in the world, he said, you're not trying hard enough. So the moral of this story is, you should recognize your own potential and not have somebody tell you you're not trying hard enough. Or the person who's educating you has been miseducated. A lot of that happens too. This is the iron school. The reason why I know that shapes and lines can solicit emotions the same way a well-painted picture is because I've had people come out here and begin to cry just because the way this place was arranged. This is the iron school. Everyone on the planet had to go through the iron school to learn how to rust, because you really can't miseducate people unless everyone is miseducated. So iron had to miseducate everybody. So they was rocks who was learning how to rust by iron, who was tricking people. And once you graduate, you're given a degree. And you go out and teach other people how to rust. In most cultures, the oppressed never knows the history of the oppressor. You ever notice that? How would you know? But the oppressor knows everything about you. And so they see some stuff, they start taking stuff. You know, and they start tanning themselves, claiming your history. But you would never know. The only thing you would know is that your friends are telling you, oh, you acting like iron now. That's what that exhibit is about. Again, it's designed out. You see my circling dots? You see the iron hanging up there, the wood? It's all communicating the same information. Now turn around behind you, please. Iron was not a dummy. Iron was a very true person. Iron said, you know what, if I take the children of iron, rocks, wood, and mirrors, and if I only want the artists. Artists are some of the most dangerous people on the planet, but they don't know that. They're trying to paint a painting for somebody that put over their couch. One artist can change the minds of thousands of people, maybe millions. So I said, I'm going to take these kids and put them in a special school. And I'm going to give them all the information on the man, and I'm going to ease my propaganda in there. But if you know anything about teaching children, at some point in time, they begin to challenge you. Some of the stuff you can teach them. So as iron is being challenged by wood, mirrors, and one other element, rocks escape. Rocks moved to the land of wood, set up their own schools, and began to teach themselves how to rust. So the moral of this story is you got to be careful about what you teach yourself. You might be teaching yourself what your oppressor wants you to learn. I'm going to get back to Dave. I'm going this way. This car here, I know I'm dating myself, are you? This car was new when I got it. But I didn't put any oil in it. I blew the engine. So I said, you know, I'm going to punish myself the rest of my life. So as opposed to getting rid of it, I put it in the installation because it works. It represents all modes of transportation. Everyone went through the iron school to learn how to rust, no exception. By bus, by plane, by train, walking, you all had to go learn how to rust. It was a requirement. Now, behind you, the University of Michigan is giving us a hoop house, and it's going to be state of the art, so therefore it needs electricity. They're going to put $20,000 worth of solar panels on top of that building. And this state-of-the-art hoop house would be available for people to use in the community. First, I go off the grid. I received a call from DTE saying, you know, you got to pay your bill. I said, a joke on you, buddy. One more year of this and I'm out of here. But this hoop house is state-of-the-art. Now, iron began to feel a little empathetic about how it was treating people. So it said to iron, rocks, and wood, if you want to protest, you come here. Come here and protest. Nothing happens. But the people began to realize everyone who came here to protest were never seen again. So people stopped protesting because peaceful protesting meant the end for them. One day, some people say I speak so softly, half in the back probably can't hear me. One day, I'm giving a tour, and this man said, Dabls, I got a tractor. I'm thinking it was a modern day tractor with a turn on the dime. This is what he gave me. This tractor is probably from 1900s, early 1900s. But I decided to keep it anyway, just to remind you that was a time when we used to grow our own food. You didn't go to the store and buy it out of packages. You had to cook it. So iron decided that it was going to free everybody because it was getting so many complaints. So it built this monument for itself to remind people that it had freed them. Iron, rocks, wood, and mirrors had freed them. Not quite. As we go further in the installation, I'll tell you, I kept one thing out. Now, in my research, there were things that I discovered that just didn't make sense. For instance, there are no races on the planet, but yet you have the institution of racism. You have laws that would put you in the jail for being racist. It's just various cultures on the planet. So how can I create an installation that would deal with this concept of racism without biting into it? Racism occurs in the marketplace, occurs in office buildings, schools, vacation. So this represents my idea about racism, because these are the things that we make, these are the things we live with, so I decided to put them out there. But most of them are made out of iron. You may not can see it, but this is a very powerful place here. We underestimate the power of iron here on this planet. One day I'm out here, there was a Native American came through. So he gentrified, he laid down in front of it, and he got up and he pulled a piece of iron from under his tongue. He said, Dabls, we know about iron. We did a Brazilian festival here. We did two. They were just too big for this small space. They knew more about what was going on here because a lot of things in this installation they use in their religion called Santa Rio. The guy with the name was. Yeah. So there are things that we are not aware of that's going on around us because we have a well-rounded education. So we're going to move across. By the way, these are holy lands. There was a guy named Ibn Corey Pitts. He's still around. He said that this was African burial ground. In New York, they discovered a burial ground. They decided to identify it. So this is a sacred grounds. Now, iron had a 100-year war with wood. Over 100 million pieces of wood was killed. Iron was pissed because iron is looking for labor. It wasn't trying to kill people. It wanted free labor. So iron built these reservations all over the planet, and wood, they house wood. The paint cans represents casinos. In iron's mind, they should live happily ever after. We gave them casinos, a safe environment. But some of the worst conditions on the planet occur on these various casinos. All these isms that we deal with occur on the casinos. Now, behind you is another car I forgot to put oil in. And the reason why I kept this car, because that's a truck really, it just looked like a Jeep. 90% of the stuff that's out here was hauled here on top of that truck. One person operation. I didn't want to pay nobody. And I didn't see it as work. I wanted to see the ideal, I wanted to see it into fruition, so I was just working. And, but I wouldn't do it again. This is the reservation Photoshop. But this one is called I'm Teaching Rocks Table Manners. This one is dangerous because most of the people on the planet still eat with their hands. I know you find it hard to believe, right? They still eat with their hands. In fact, the Ethiopian restaurant is famous here in the city, was in Ferndale now, for it was a place you can go eat with your hands. So you get a date and say, we're gonna go eat with our hands, because everyone uses utensils now. Iron is teaching rocks how to use these utensils. There's about 13 on each side, and you got to learn a tablespoon from a soup spoon for a jello spoon. But if I can get you to use all those utensils, I also can get you to understand what real fine art is. I can get you to understand what true ballet dance is. I can get you to understand what theater is. So around this ideal of table manners is where the complete assimilation of mimicking another culture occurs. It's very subtle, very simple. Then once you learn, you take your little girl, she used the wrong spoon. You know what spoon you should be using. I'm teaching rocks table manners. I told you earlier that iron, when it freed everybody, it kept one thing from all people, from all the four groups of people. This is a moat. You get too close, a shark will jump up and bite you. This is an electronic cable, and these cabinets have 3-inch thick walls. What is so important that iron would want under that kind of security? Your history. If I keep your history away from you, it's unnatural for you to mimic or assimilate whatever history is around. So iron knew that. Your history is in here. And that tree wasn't in there when I first put that on. The nature of the tree. This installation here. Can y'all see the design aspect of this? And the design is just for me to tell my story. Now, if you ever watch a movie dealing with outer space, you're gonna see trees. So I'm trying to figure out how they're gonna pull that out. How this guy gonna take these people to another planet? Only if we do not know how instinct the tree is to our survival here. So, but they managed to do it. They live in on a far, far away planet. So some of the curators got the idea, let's do an exhibit and show what trees used to look like. And that's what this is. The curators had never seen a tree before. So these are supposed to be trees. There's an oak tree in there, there's an elm tree in there, but all it is just the rearrangement of wood, the power of the tree. I gained another respect for animals, because anytime you pick up something, there may be 15 or 20 different types of species under there, living in harmony. And under these installations, you might find possums, squirrels, all the animals you find in the city, they're under there. Michigan, the car center, myself. they asked me to create an interactive installation. Of course, you get the job, you tell them what you're going to do, then you do what you want to do. Because after you get so far involved with it, what are they going to do? Can't take it back. So my ideal of interaction with the artwork was they stood about maybe 3-4 feet apart, and there were mirrors on them. So anybody moved through them, they would see images of themselves. And people enjoyed it. And the tallest one was 15 feet high, 12 feet. So it was like people don't like to be under close space, claustrophobic, I think they call it. The kids like it, but the parents were running through thinking the thing was going to fall. Because if you look at something in the sky, it looks like it's falling. So it went over quite well, but it was not what they asked me for.
I remember going through it, taking pictures.
Yeah, downtown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So I decided to put it out here. Another pet peeve of mine is this concept called time. They try to present it as though it's an absolute. You ever figured out, why do we have leap year? How couldn't they just have all of it in there once? Well, they had all this time left over, enough to do another day. And there's still time left over. Because every day somebody had to go over there and reset that clock, because it's either too slow or too fast. So I did a concept how most cultures on the planet dealt with this concept called time. First, they would have a word that was equal to system. Everything on this planet is operating under a system. Ants, birds, nature. See, we're in the middle of going through a season now. Fall of the year is coming. You can't stop it, you can't hold your breath and stop it. The tree's just gonna drop the leaves, then cold. But the African people had a system too that dealt with them as people, not in age, but in a system. You were born, as soon as the people recognize it's time to teach you about being a young man, you're about here. Then the next phase, there, you're raising your family. Then when your family get big enough to go off on their own, you are an elder. And the last phase, you move towards being an ancestor. That was the African system. So the current concerns that we have about death were eliminated. You knew what you were going to do. You were going to go become an ancestor and consult the people who are living. Behind sick, toss you in the water. If you died, you were tossed in the water. So the sharks knew that they were going to eat traveling that Atlanta route to get to this country. That's my interpretation of the Middle Passage.
It's hard to hear.
Have you been in the store?
Oh, I absolutely have.
You bought something?
I absolutely
So you can get this free lecture.
No $50 for the lecture?
No, I don't charge for information. Dabls.
You should have a little bucket here for contributions.
No, there should be a door that's open. Is that door, anybody in that gallery?
We didn't go up to that. But he was one door. He was one in the front.
I got to come around and open up. I don't know what happened to us.
Yeah,
I'll be
there
down
were
a
two people.
second.
Two people when I got here saying come out this way.
They came out of it.
Well, telling us to come this way.
I ain't making no money. You see the depression coming over me.
Yeah, let us in so we can go spend some money.
I am. I'm going right in now. I just knew I had a cash register, but all these people out here.
Right.
And the young lady's not there.